Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Africam show brought to you by explore.org. My name is Russell Gerber, with you for the next half hour on the live cameras as we watch a showdown with some of our most recognizable animals. Live on the cameras this afternoon. And you see a little pesky scavenger arriving on the scene, but as you can see in the shadows on the right hand side we have the remnants of a pride of lions lazing in the shade, and in the background a little herd of zebra looking on, squaring off against our lions. Now, many of you might know there was actually a kill here last night. Pride managed to take down a wildebeest, and I know many of you will wonder, well, why on earth aren't these lions having a go at these zebra? Well, they're so fat and full at the moment in content that they're quite happy to simply enjoy the cool, shady area in the afternoon, and with full tummies, not too bothered about hunting today. As always, folks, we've got a super fun show for you all. Please feel free to send in those questions if you have anything on your mind. Not every day we get something or a scene like this on the live cameras during the show. It's really fun to watch, even though they don't look much interested in moving about, those lions. But if you've got anything on your mind, or if you just want to say hi, please feel free to give us a shout. And I'll do my best to get to your questions before the end of the show. As always, of course, we've got some great highlights for you from the last few days and the last week. If you didn't manage to catch all the fun things that happened on the cameras this week, we've got it all lined up for you today. To keep you all on your toes this morning, we've got well, afternoon for us, but I know many of you watching places in the world where you're still getting up, got a coffee or tea in hand, I imagine. And your quiz question for today: in the past we've chatted about the bite forces, the powerful jaws that we find here in Africa and in the wild. We chatted about crocodiles. Nile crocodile having the strongest recorded bite force in nature. So my question to you today is, what is the bite force of a large or big male African lion? And as always, do your best not to cheat and stay off Google. So as I mentioned, the crocodile which just to give you some context, to give you an idea of where to put the lion without looking it up. The crocodile, which is, as I said, the strongest recorded bite force, it's recorded at around 3,700 psi. So let me know what you think. We'll get to the answer towards the end of the show. But thank you for joining us, all of you. And Jane asks, hi Jane, firstly, welcome to the show. Asks, is that herd of zebra one group? How does the social structure work? Lovely question, Jane. It's likely to be one group. It's always difficult to tell in just an unedited picture like this, but normally the social structure of a zebra herd would be dominated by a stallion, who would then have a harem of females with him, and then a few offspring as well, until eventually always fun to have the lions on camera. As you can tell, they're looking pretty fat and full at the moment. Sorry about that, folks. I think we lost audio for a moment there, but I think we're back now. But if you didn't get that quiz question, the question today is, what is the bite force of a large male lion? So try not to look it up. But as I mentioned, to give you some context, which we spoke about a little while ago, the crocodile bite force, which is around 3,700 psi. Let me know what your thoughts are on the bite force of a lion and where they fit in. As I mentioned, these lionesses managed to take down a wildebeest last night, I believe. We also had a few other visitors on site. We've already seen our black-backed jackal lurking around the edges, looking for any potential scraps. And then, of course, we've got we had the arrival of brown hyena as well on site, which we do sometimes see around Tau. I just can't believe how green things are looking at Tau already. All that wonderful grass coming through, new grass shoots, and as often happens, many of the animals have spread out around the reserve now. But we were fortunate enough to still get the lions on camera catching a wildebeest, but it was in the rain, and that's a pretty typical behavior from lions and your predators. They often use things like that. Wind can also be a help. It helps for the predators not to be heard by potential prey, but it does make things a little difficult, as it can swirl their scent around, and the animals can pick up the scent if it's gusty. But one thing that they do enjoy is a storm, any kind of rain, which really makes things difficult for the prey species to pick up on any predators. And that's what they did last night, these lionesses. And Mary asks, are those lions that close to the zebra? They're pretty close, Mary. Obviously, the perspective that we have and the zoom on the camera makes them look closer than they are. But you can tell how absolutely disinterested the lions are in those zebra, and the zebra well aware of their presence, and even the zebra really not too concerned at this stage. And Michelle Mility says the luckiest zebra on earth. I agree. At the moment they're pretty safe, certainly from these lions. You often see this behavior from prey species where they will, once they've actually spotted predators, people often wonder why they don't just run away. Well, if they can see them and they've got a decent enough distance between them, the herbivores will quite happily just keep an eye on them and still feel relatively secure, as secure as you can feel in the African wild. While we're watching these, let's have a little look at our first highlight video. Now, this wasn't the same group of lions. It was actually at Olifants River, but a really cool little clip to give you an idea of the hunting skill and prowess of lionesses. So I'll give you a chance just to watch for a few moments. If you watch where she puts her feet, every time they'll be her hind feet will go very close to where she's placed her front foot, if not in the exact same spot, which of course just allows them to stay as silent as possible. And they've got their eye on what looks like some waterbuck on the island in the middle of the river. Now, waterbuck often use that behavior to avoid predation. They of course are really good swimmers, even with the potential threat. But there you see, they either have spotted the lions or could pick up the scent, and that gave them away. Yeah, it's a pretty tough life out there for lions as well. Don't ever forget how hard it is to catch one of these big antelope. And in some areas, lions only have a success rate of hunting at around 30 to 40%. So the vast majority of hunts that you will see will be unsuccessful. I've spent a lot of time in the bush, and even then it took me years to see my first full kill by lions. But nonetheless, really fun, interesting sighting for all of you. Hope you enjoyed that. We're back live now at Campers Dam. Here we have one of our most beautiful antelope species, the gemsbok, or oryx, depending on where you're from. And then our little rusty coloured antelope with the little calves background, of course, hartebeest, red hartebeest, one of the fastest antelope here in Africa. And of course these two species are quite interesting in that they prefer, or tend to prefer, more arid regions, do well in semi-arid regions. The gemsbok or oryx, of course, are well known for surviving in sometimes almost completely desert environments. And one of the world's most endangered mammal species is, of course, the Arabian oryx. And this one on picture now looks like a female. The males have got generally slightly shorter horns, but shorter and fatter. The ladies with very long, thin, beautiful horns. And they can, of course, be a pretty significant weapon, defensive weapon if needed. Their first response to any predator, of course, would be to try and run away. But they can use those horns to defend themselves if required. As you can see, as we've seen on a lot of the cameras, there's quite a bit of wind about, a lot of new greenery about, and we've had pretty significant rain across the country this last week. And a quick hello to you, some of you, our regulars out there. Stephanie from the USA, welcome back. Lovely to have you with us. Debbie, I think it's your first time with us, but thank you for joining us. Debbie Proffer, hope you're enjoying the show. And Anna Emerson asks, is that rare to see the zebras and lions so close together? It's not as rare as you'd think, Anna. They're actually quite often in that sort of a situation, particularly in areas where there's large open areas, plains areas like the Serengeti. Where there's not a lot of cover, so often in those areas you'd see prides of lions and other predators like cheetah, even leopard. They'll often utilize little termite mounds where they're a little raised above the ground, and many of the herbivores will be staring in one direction, and you follow their gaze and you'll find that they're looking at these predators hanging out on the termite mounds. So you do see it quite often in certain areas, but I haven't seen that quite so nicely at Tau before. And here we are, we've got a beautiful view at Naledi of a crocodile that we mentioned earlier, the world's most powerful bite force. And we spoke about it then. Interestingly, they don't have very strong muscles when opening their jaws. So you would have seen many occasions when they are actually handling crocodiles in zoos, etc., that a simple bit of elastic around the mouth can actually keep that mouth closed. But you definitely don't want to be in the middle when they close that mouth. And speaking of that bite force, let's dive into our next highlight video. And look at that, opening his mouth right on cue. Thank you so much for that. And here you can see a lovely view of round 2 between our tortoise and the crocodile. I know some of you saw this last week. We've had a little bit of a standoff, and here you see this young crocodile deciding, well, let me have a go at this leopard tortoise and see if I can get a slow moving meal. But this young croc has quickly figured out that the tortoise is just a little bit too much for him to handle. And the tortoise looking somewhat unfazed by being in the mouth of one of the continent's top predators, decides maybe I'll come for a drink a little later on. And just another amazingly cool sighting captured on the cameras from the last week. Tortoise is coming back for some more. The crocodile's still thinking maybe, just maybe, this would work out, and then decides, nah, this is a waste of my time. Things get a little bit more difficult for the crocs as we go into the rainy season. They've had it all their own way for the last few months, with the dry weather and the waterholes drying up. So they've been able to get at various fish species being captured, or basically being corralled by the evaporating water, forced into shallow and narrow pools, and the crocs have just been feasting on them, along with a lot of our aquatic bird species, of course. Herons and egrets have had a field day, and the storks, of course. It looks like some of our lions were just on the move. We just missed them. It's hard to tell, but it looks like there's still at least one laying in the shadow there. And the other has found a new location to take a load off. That sort of dark lion-colored rock that you see there. There you go. There's a couple of tails. That's often the biggest clue you'll get when looking for lions in this time of day. It's still pretty warm, of course, in the afternoons as we head into high summer in December. And temperatures comfortably in the 30 to 40 degrees Celsius. And a couple of quick shout outs as well to you. Erica Crowley was asking what's the weather like. Yeah, Erica, I hope that answers. Pretty warm. Of course, a little bit of rain around does cool things down overnight, but generally by the next day, if things clear up, temperatures will soar into the late 30s, or in Celsius, of course, and into the 90s, sometimes even hitting 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Thank you for your question. Jennifer Lane enjoying the beautiful scenery and animals. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. And Anna Emerson says it's nice to learn something new. Well, I'm glad I could help out with that, Anna. As I mentioned, pretty cool to have the lions on camera live in the afternoon. So I'd suggest keeping an eye on them. You never know what sort of action might arise, but they are looking pretty lazy. I would suspect we're not going to see much movement until perhaps this evening, when things cool down. But keep your eyes out there, you never know. And while our lions do what lions do best, having a sleep in the mid-afternoon, let's go to our next highlight, to what is often considered their eternal enemy, the hyena, spotted hyena. And of course our quiz question for today was about the bite force of a lion. And it may or may not surprise you that the hyena is significantly more powerful when it comes to a bite force. It of course helps them to crack through bones when they do scavenge, but they are of course prolific hunters on their own and in their own right, but also they do enjoy a bit of fun as well, often painted as the bad guys of the bush, but they really are quite caring towards each other when it comes to the clan. They can have their own internal family fights around the dinner table, just like anyone. And we've witnessed some pretty severe fights between clan members trying to establish hierarchy, but they can just as easily be very playful. Once again, these two, named by one of our consistent viewers, Jake, who let us know these were two of the regulars we see, Mo and Chembo. They look like two little males having a little pool party. It's a pretty good time of year for a pool party. As I said, pretty warm, but always fun to see one of Africa's top predators having a little time to relax. Diedrich's cuckoo calling in the background, just a wonderful, wonderful scene. And there you go. Like I said, nice to see them having a little bit of fun and a break from life in the bush. We're of course back live now with our waterbuck at Willifantes River. This may well be one of those waterbuck females we saw being hunted by the lions at the beginning of the show. Enjoying some of those fresh new grass roots and shoots coming through. All looking pretty peaceful. At the river. So those lionesses obviously have moved on, as we saw in our video. And before we head out today, I need to give you the answer to our quiz question. So let's get to it. Now, quite interestingly, the bite force of a lion is actually quite low down when it comes to the big predators of the world. As I said, they come nowhere near the crocodile at 3,700 psi. But interestingly, the lion has a relatively low bite force of around 650 psi, which is of course pounds per square inch. And they generally use their jaws for suffocation, which is why they don't need to have such powerful jaws, and they generally don't eat the bones. They tend to, of course, use their claws, which are massively powerful and sharp, and they use those to capture their prey, and often to even dig into the side of prey species. But most of their feeding is done with their carnassial shear, the sharp scissor-like teeth on the sides of their mouth. When they first take something down, you'll see them using those sharp shears to cut through the meat, and then they'll use their little incisors in the front to pull the hair off as well, but not particularly strong in terms of bite force. It's actually not much higher than that of a big domestic dog. I will say though, you don't really want to be on the wrong side of a lion, despite not the world's most powerful bite force. But thank you for taking part today, everybody. Once again, I hope you managed to learn something new. But these waterbuck managed to avoid that bite force last night, and our poor wildebeest at Tau did not manage to avoid it. And that's the way it goes out here in the bush. But you never know what you might get. So I would certainly recommend keeping your eyes on the camera at Tau. And those lines around Olifants River may well show up again. But as you know, it's always live and unscripted, so you never know what might show up. But as always, folks, thank you for joining us for the Africam show. It's been super fun hanging out with you all, as usual. And we'll be back again next week, same time, same place. Checking out the cameras, going through our highlights, and of course taking your questions if you have anything on your mind. I'll also be on the Explore Africam page for a few moments to answer some questions if you have anything on your mind. If not, we'll see you all again next week for some more unscripted wildlife action. But from all of us here in the Africam team, we'll see you all again soon. Cheers for now.